Welcome to Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire, joined by Acquanetta Warren. She is the mayor of Fontana in San Bernardino County. She recently went to Washington, D.C. for a remarkable summit. Tell us about this summit. Who was there? Who was invited?
It was the Transportation Infrastructure Summit at the White House, given by the White House. And I received a personal invitation from the White House. There were 18 of us. There were 2 tribal leaders, 8 mayors, and 8 governors.
From the entire nation? Just 8 mayors?
Just through the entire nation. The closest to California would be Albuquerque, New Mexico. My friend R.J. Berry, mayor of New Mexico.
Right.
He was there.
Of Albuquerque.
Of Albuquerque.
How did you get on this list?
I don't know. I got an email. Actually, the last program I was on with you, I got an email when I came in here saying, you know, we'd like you to join us on June 8th to meet with cabinet members and the president. The president was at the bottom. Like, you know, no big deal, the president.
So you met with the president of the United States.
Met with the president of the United States. It was a summit. We met with Vice President Pence. We had lunch with him. We discussed why infrastructure was important. Then we broke out in working groups. It was not a party.
Right.
We actually worked. We took notes. We worked with the cabinet members. I had the honor of working with Secretary Elaine Chao.
Transportation Secretary.
Transportation. After the summit portion I was in, she walked up to me and said, we're going to do discussions with the president in 30 minutes. We're going to all meet together now because we all had different working groups.
Right.
And I'd like you to represent me and talk about what we discussed.
What was your working group? Was
my
was
working
there a focus?
Group? Yes, it was. I focused in my comments on giving our youth dignity and career pathways, and I felt
through
like
transportation projects.
Through transportation projects.
Okay,
that's correct.
So the question becomes: we've heard the new administration talk about their desire to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure projects. And interestingly, that is a program one could argue both Republicans and Democrats could get behind.
Exactly.
I mean, Democrats, especially, you would think would get behind.
Right.
The challenge, though, is, you know, will this administration focus upon it? Because there's been a lot of focus on health care reform. There's been focus on immigration. Do you have a sense, based upon your meeting, that this will become a priority?
I know it will be. Already, I'll give you an example. One of the big things that came out was the permitting process. No one argued that we don't need to protect the environment and that departments are important. But it's the forms, it's the procedures.
But is that a federal issue or is that a state, city, county?
It's a federal issue because each state has its own guidelines. But we also have to confer with the federal level. And what has happened in that discussion, you found out that the forms that they have you fill out, sometimes in waiting for your form to be approved, not your project, just your form, they change the forms.
Right. And there's no doubt that this administration has focused mightily on regulatory reform. I don't know if this area has been one of their focus, but there's no doubt about it. Let me ask you, as you may remember, in the beginning of the Obama administration, the stimulus package was passed.
Right.
And there was money set aside for transportation projects. But the projects that got the most attention were those that were, quote, shovel ready.
Right.
Do we need to get ready here in California?
I agree. I believe we do, but I think we're going to have to work closer together because what he's looking at is bringing private and public funds together with the federal level. And I know that this movement is moving. I just got back from the United States Conference of Mayors.
Of which you
the
are
summer
a leader.
program, which I'm on the advisory board. He sent his representative from the White House to do roundtables with the mayors.
On transportation.
On transportation. But the big focus that I got out of that meeting is he's focused on crumbling infrastructure.
But what do you make of the public partnerships? Because that's an interesting, I misspoke, the private partnerships, because that's an interesting element. There are private partnerships when you think about toll roads.
Right.
And so is that where he's going?
I think what he's empowering all the states and the cities to look at is those private opportunities that have been sitting around waiting to help, but we don't go and get them to help. And I also think with groups forming like Sandbag and those
Right,
groups,
which is the
public funds become even more important.
right.
So you have your public funds, you partner with the private, and you work with the federal level.
So you know that recently the state of California passed SB 54, which is a transportation tax, and there are other elements to it.
Right.
Whatever one may think about it, money will be flowing for infrastructure. And I'm wondering, Mayor, if that money could be leveraged to get more money out of Washington, presuming the federal infrastructure package moves forward.
Well, let me give you a great example. This weekend, I had a discussion with the LA Mayor, Eric Garcetti.
Sure.
He thanked me for representing the West Coast.
That's nice. That's nice.
And we talked about where this is all going, and we both agreed that whatever pots we have currently,
Right.
we are going to have to work together.
Right, because LA County, for example,
That's
passed
right.
their Measure M, I believe it
Right.
was. It was a transportation sales tax.
Right, exactly. So we got to put all those together and figure out how do we leverage all this to get that federal money as a group. Now, one of the things that I talked about is that LA Port, Long Beach Port, is the gateway to the Asian market.
And it's also a significant driver of economic development in the Inland Empire.
That's right. But when that product gets to our 15th freeway,
Right.
we are the gateway to America.
Right.
And Secretary Childs, she paid attention to those comments and asked me to make sure I make those comments when we were in the room with the president.
Right.
But for me, the biggest focus was not only speaking in her behalf to talk about what we had talked about, but when I got in that room, I had my seat put right next to the president.
Are you concerned about the president's touchy relationship with California? Is one way to put it, because he does seem to have a soft spot for the Midwest. The Midwest arguably delivered the presidency to him.
Right.
And so, I would hope that that touchy relationship wouldn't impact us negatively, but is that of concern?
Before I went back to D.C., I had that in the back of my
Right,
mind.
right.
Because I'm like, oh my goodness.
Right.
But you know what? When you walk in the White House, which is really the people's house,
Right.
there's nothing that says California,
Right.
Iowa, Georgia
I
is
understand.
different.
Right.
And I think when you're in a leadership position, just as I have had to embrace, you can't just represent one group, one location, one area.
Does this president, you were in the room with him.
Right.
I've never met him. All I see is what's, out there.
Let me
Does
tell
he
you,
feel as if
it was a great feeling. He spoke before, and I'm going to send you the YouTube.
Oh, yeah, please.
He spoke before, and he made it clear what his focus was, how important this was to his administration, and what he wanted from everyone was input.
Okay. So what's next?
What's next?
What
We
do
continue to follow up with the White House. I'm working with the various transportation regional partners that I work
Sandbag,
with.
for example.
Right,
San Bernardino.
exactly. We're going to
Yeah.
get Secretary Chow out here. That's
Wow.
the goal for me in the next 6 months to make that invitation happen. And we've already started that conversation.
Right.
We want to show her our needs.
Because we have dramatic needs. And
We
like you
do.
said, so much of what we see in terms of products on the shelves go through the port and then
Right.
on the 15 freeway right through Fontana.
We're the gateway to
Right.
America, and we need our tools to provide that service.
How wonderful it must have been for you to be in the room, and how phenomenally fortunate we are that you were invited as the voice for the West Coast.
I just
LA
couldn't
Mayor
believe it.
Garcetti said it.
I gave up sitting at the table when we got into the president's office area because I couldn't find my name tag, and our city manager, he went straight to the front. All I saw was governor, governor,
I
governor.
love it. Her name is Acquanetta Warren, Mayor of Fontana. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Local Edition.